Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from October 13th, 2023, and I'm recording this on April 11th, 2024. As always, those dates so you know when this information is relevant because the market's always moving and changing, as you'll see when we compare just these prices from 6 months ago. As always, also, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Those are the two lists I use. I've been using them now for 5 years, basically doing this list. So I've just continued to stick with those lists for consistency. But what we're doing, why do we do this? We're looking at them to see what factors made books hot, made people chase them in the market, made them jump in value, what things were going on with books that caused us all to go after them, and what has happened since, and how do they perform in the market once you get away from that moment when the book is hot, and see what we can learn. See if we can learn what factors should cause us to, we better go on and buy in, or we should just be patient. Most of the time it's patience, pays off. One form or another, you may not necessarily get a better deal, but you don't necessarily lose anything by being patient. So let's look. We got 16 books between the two lists this week. Let's see what we can learn this week. First up, we have Cyberpunk 2077 Trauma Team #1. Rumors of a movie, possibly with Keanu involved, is what caused us to hit the list. $10 to $30 back then for raw copies. 9.8 going for $115. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. 9.8, 50 to 80, and this is a trap. And really, anything optioned, anything like that, beyond $15, you should always come back later. Almost like 99.9% of the time, come back later. So, and that's the case here with this one as well. Next, we have Star Slayer, #2, first appearance of Rocketeer. Rumors of a movie reboot or maybe a show on Disney Plus. I think there was a couple different rumors here. I wasn't quite sure where this ended up and what form this was going to take. But Rocketeer was going to be brought back in some form, and that's why people were chasing it. $30 to $40 for raw copies back then. Now, $10 to $60 for raw copies. So we're giving you the full range on the quality of the issues. Not a ton of sales above that $30, $40 range, but a couple. 9.8 sitting $2 to $230. So we're going to call this steady and I'll be back because most of the sales are like right in that $25 to $40, $30 to $40 range. But there's a couple of higher sales, several sales lower on clearly lower quality comics. No 9.8 values to compare to back then, at least from the list. So we're going to stay steady on this one. Next, we have American Psycho #1, the Randall Bruder 1 in 10 business card variant. Back then this was going for $25 to $50 right when it came out. Now it's a $40 to $50 book on the raw side. 9.8, $125 to $150. So this is going to be steady and worth it. Didn't really gain value on the high-end sales back then, but it didn't lose. I'm a little surprised by that it didn't lose value. But I remember 1 in 10, and it was going, most of the sales were 30 to 50, which means 3, 4, 5 times ratio. If I'd followed my own rules on this, I would have probably said, it's probably worth it. And it was. So there you go. There's a case where the rules actually worked and held the book up. Next, we have Transformers #1, the 1 in 100 foil spoiler cover. This is on the list last week. Last week we were talking about it had a wide range. It was like a 125 to 190 book, but no pre-sale 9.8 sales yet. By this point, it had settled kind of 150 to 175, so it kind of settled in the center of that range. And then a 9.8 did pre-sale for $350 at this point. Now it's a $60 to $110 book. 9.8 is $140 to $250. So technically, I wrote down dumpster fire, and then I did the math, and technically I probably should have just called this a trap based on how much it dropped back. It says dumpster fire. Ignore that. It's really just a trap, but definitely a book that is backed up a lot compared to what it was going for back then. All right, next we have Miss Marvel, the New Mutant #1, the Art Adams 1 in 25 second print. So he did it. There's the color version was the first print, and then we got a second print, black and white version. Out of the gate, a 1 in 25 second print, $120 to $150, which is huge money. These Art Adams things have been very, over the last year, these Art Adams covers have been going crazy. This is just another one. Now, only one sale recently, and it was $120, so it's right at the bottom end of those prices before. But all the listings are $150 plus, so that's part of why we're only getting one sale. So we're gonna call this steady. I'll be back if it gets on the lower end. I feel like I wonder if you got a 125 on there right now, if it would even sell, or if it'd have to go lower. But the information we have right now, it's at least steady, and then I'll be back. We'll see if that really holds. If people start actually dropping their values, how far they have to drop them to actually start getting consistent sales. We'll see. Next, we have Batman and Robin #2. The Lyrics Lee, 1 in 25, cover appearance of Shush, and this is her first appearance. $25 to $40 back then for this 1 in 25. So didn't even make, even though it was the first appearance, didn't even make double ratio. Now it's a $15 to $30 book. So didn't make double ratio, dropped below ratio for the most part. 90 to 120 for a 9.8. So down in a trap. I think did I not just like do the math? Because I think I typed I'll be back on this one. So down in a trap also. But yeah, seems like there's not much buzz about this character, at least currently at the moment. All right, next. We have Poison Ivy, #15, the Seb McGinnon, 1 in 25. Back then, 125, 30 to 45, not a great sign. But this one actually stayed 30 to 50. 9.8, though, interesting, 45 to 100. So we got a 9.8 for less than a couple of the raw sales. But so we're going to call it steady and worth it. A little surprising, this one didn't follow the rules. It kind of just sat where it was at. It didn't go up any. So you didn't lose anything by waiting right now, but you didn't necessarily gain anything by waiting. But this one's still sitting right at that same range between ratio and double ratio. All right. With that, we got a little bit of DCU movie news that's driving some books. We have Omega Man #3, first appearance of Lobo. And this was just all the rumors about Jason Momoa being Lobo that have been going crazy now ever since James Gunn took over the DCU. And so this is all about Lobo. Raw copies back then were going for 70, 9.8 going for 400. Now raw copy will cost you 30 to 130, so that 70's pretty much right at the average like it was back then. 9.8, 260 to 330, so a slight step back. Actually, a pretty big step back on the 9.8 side, so that's why we are going to call this a trap. This book has come back on the 9.8 side, but raw side pretty steady here in terms of where those prices have been going. Next, we have Lobo #1, the first Lobo solo and his origin. Raw copies back then were going for $8, 9.8, 88. Now it's a $5 to $25 book raw, 9.8, 90 to 150. So we're actually up straight cash a little bit here. This is a book that actually wasn't getting a lot of attention related to Lobo, and now since all these rumors and stuff, this book is getting some attention for being a key Lobo book, and it has driven the prices up to that minor low-key price range that we typically get for a character that people do care about, but maybe not the major keys on them. So, all right, next we have Batman 609, first appearance of Hush, Thomas Elliott. So we had Shush and Hush this week, and this is really about rumors again for the second Batman movie, Robert Pattinson movie, that still rumors if that's where they're going to go with the villain for that. Back then, $40 to $50 for a raw copy, 9.8 hitting 150 to 175. Now it's a $30 to $60 book raw, 9.8, 150 to 200. So steady and worth it, right? And that same range has expanded a little bit on the raw side. Bottom end of the range is still the same on the 9.8, but the top end's moved up just a little bit. So yeah, steady and worth it is the perfect definition for this one. Great Batman book, great Batman story. So yeah, and this one's continuing to hold value. All right, next we have Bart Simpsons, Treehouse of Horror #1, and it was just October. It was Halloween time, so that was why I was hitting the list. $25 raw back then, 9.8, 500, and this one's actually rare for a seasonal book, but I guess people got some attention to this book. Kind of has driven some prices here. This is now a $20 to $80 book raw. Still 9.8, most recent 9.8, still going for $500. So yeah, this is an up and worth it, particularly because of the raw sales only. 9.8 sitting about the same value, but yeah, a lot of sales above that $25 mark. People are rediscovering this book, I guess, and if they can find high grade raws, they're willing to pay for it. So, all right, with that, we're moving over to the MCU side of things, and our first MCU related book is Bloodstone #1, the first appearance of Elsa Bloodstone. This hit the list because they were re-releasing Werewolf by Night in color. So I never did go back and watch it in color. I love the black and white version of it, but I never did go back and watch it in color. I need to do that. Anyway, they re-released it. So her book was back on the list. 50 to 200 raw, 9.8, 3 to 370, 350 to 375. Now it's a $50 to $125 book raw, 9.8, 3 to 375. So this is a down end. I'll be back. Top end of the 9.8 stayed about the same, but the bottom end dropped. Top end of the raws have come back. You can maybe say steady and I'll be back versus down end and I'll be back, but definitely an I'll be back here. And all of these prices, even from the peak 6 months ago, were way less than what this book was going for when we first got rumors of that show and that she was coming. But still a great show, great performance. I'd love to see more of the character, so we'll see. Next, Nova #1, always on the list for years and years and years, and it's never happening. I don't know. It probably will happen at some point, but at this point, I'm just like, why would you spec? But first appearance of Nova, Richard Rider, 20 to 200 raw back then, 9.8, 11, 25. Now it's a $20 to $90 book raw, 9.8, 825 to 1275. So raw copies have stepped back, 9.8 across the same range with a little higher peak, lower lows. We're just going to go steady and I'll be back. This is basically where this book lives now. Occasionally you'll get a little higher sale. Occasionally you'll get a little lower sale. But this book sets around $1,000, 9.8, plus or minus 150, 200 bucks. A lower grade copy is going to cost you $20, $30. High grade copy is going to cost you 100, maybe a little more on a raw. This is where this book lives. It hits the list every so often because people get news and rumors and they chase it. So there's a bunch of sales and maybe you get a higher sale than typical. But yeah, this is just what this book is now. So next we have Spidey #1. This is the freshman year storyline, and we got rumor that we were getting, or not rumors, we knew we were getting a Spider-Man freshman year animated series to fill in the gaps of the live action movies or a follow-up to the most recent live action movie. So yeah, people were like, oh, well, this is a storyline that already exists. So they were chasing this book, but it was really just a bunch of sales, not driving the price. $3 back then, but a 9.8 went for 82. No recent 9.8 sales, listed for less than 82 and not selling. $1 to $4 on a raw copy. So yeah, this is a down and I'll be back. Zero reason to have chased this book back then. All right, next we got 2 Daredevil books with rumors related to Born Again. Daredevil 183, first battle of Daredevil and Punisher. Hitting the list, people were chasing it. Even though, go watch season 2 of the original Daredevil on Netflix, which is now on Disney Plus, I believe, because, yeah, you see this. It's already been on the screen, so I'm not sure why people were necessarily specking here, even though John Bernthal is supposed to come back as well. But, yeah, we've already seen him fight, so I don't know. But anyway, raw copy's $40, 9.8, $275, and now it's a $10 to $35 book raw, 9.8, 160 to 300. So down in a trap on the raw side for sure. Most of the sales on the 9.8 side are also less than what it was back then. So yeah, this is a book kind of just returned to what this book is, with still a few occasional high sales, but yeah, for the most part, this book is back to what it was. All right, and then last but not least this week is Daredevil 254, the first appearance of Typhoid Mary. And yeah, so rumors that they were going back to the drawing board with Born Again, and that this is a character that maybe they were going to show off a little more. I don't know. We'll see. Raw copies 25 back then, 9.8, 350. Now it's a $5 to $25 book on the raw side, so it'll be back on the raw side, but 9.8s of this book have jumped. $350 to $500 on a 9.8 side. So overall, we're going to call this up and straight gas. If you got a 9.8 back then, you can make some money off of it right now, even though most of the sales are on the raw side. So, all right, that is this week's list. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope this was informative and got something out of it, and we will catch you next time. Later.